Hello Bibliophiles and welcome back to Blatantly Bookish. I'm Marissa and today I am here with the Booktube Top 10s tag. I'm trying to hold very still because I have a rather large stack of books sitting on my lap and I do not want them to fall on the floor. I'd like to thank Petra for tagging me in this and also the original tag creator, Old Blues Chapter and Verse, for recommending that I do this tag in my comments section. I'll link both their videos down below for your perusal. A little about this tag, in case you've been living under a Booktube rock like me lately. Old Blues Chapter and Verse was inspired to make this tag by a book called The Top 10 Writers Pick Their Favorite Books, or something along those lines. They made ranked lists of their top 10 books, favorite, best, however they defined the word top. Number 1 is ranked higher than number 10, and there's a whole point system. And Blues Chapter and Verse is doing the same thing with Booktube to see what the favorite books of Booktubers are. His instructions are to define your top 10 however you want, with some parameters of what can be included, which I'll link below. And once every quarter, he says, he's going to make a video about the collective top 10s for the community. So Blues Chapter and Verse didn't discuss why his top 10 books made the list in too much depth. So I'm not sure if you're supposed to. Some people did, some people didn't. So I'm just going to do a bit of a countdown from 10 to 1, even though don't forget 1 is ranked higher than 10. And then have a little discussion about what I think about this project and the process of curating this list in general. So coming in at number 10 is The Secret Life of Bees by Suma Kid. I read this one in high school. I can't remember if I've read it since then, but it has had real staying power with me. Coming in at number 9 is Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan. I actually lent my original copy of this to a friend, didn't think I was ever going to get it back, and insisted that I get my own copy. Number 8 is Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle. Vonnegut has been pretty inspirational author for me in the past few years, and Cat's Cradle really stands out of his work, to me at least. Number 7 is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I had such a great experience buddy reading this with a whole group of people last year, and I absolutely love this book, and it is going to stay on my shelves for a very long time. Number 6 is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield, which I plan on rereading this month as part of Katie from Books and Things' The 13th Tale Along, or something like that. I'll link her video down below announcing her read-along, but I'm really excited for it, and I can't wait to read this one again. Number 5 is Middlemarch. Yes, we are starting to get into the Victorian period with this list. You'll see what I mean. Number 4 is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I've actually done a reread of this towards the beginning of my Booktube channel, and I have 2 rather long videos analyzing Wuthering Heights that I will also link down below. Number 3 is a recent read of mine, and that is Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. I did a whole video on this one not very long ago, which I will also link down below. I feel like I'm just talking about all the videos that I've done on my favorite books, which are obviously sitting in this pile. Number 2 is Jane Eyre, and this is my original beat-up copy that I have of it. It has a lot of sentimental value to me. It's a book that I've reread a lot of times, and I just want to give it a big hug. I love Jane Eyre. And coming in at number 1 is Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Coming off of Jane Austen July, this should be no surprise that it is my top book. So I know I didn't say much about that list in general, I just kind of showed you each book, but I want to talk a little about the process of making this list and what I think about this project. If you asked me to make this same list tomorrow, or a week, or a month, or a year from now, the list would probably be incredibly different. If you asked me to make the list when I was 10, it would also have been incredibly different. The rank of a book for an individual constantly fluctuates, depending on the mood of the person, how long ago they read it, how many times they've read it, how much they remember about it, and so many, many other things. Ranking classics alongside contemporary fiction or childhood favorites was particularly difficult for me, and I didn't even try to consider plays, poetry, and nonfiction, or I would have literally driven myself insane. I mean, ranking childhood favorites you haven't read for years and years alongside books that you've read and loved only last year just doesn't seem fair to the books. There's time and nostalgia and memory at play clouding all of the decisions. And then you have to take into account how much you enjoyed the book in the moment of reading it as opposed to how you felt about it and how much you thought about it after the experience of reading it. There are just so many factors that affect how you pick these books. I feel like there are multiple books on my shelves that I haven't read yet that could make this list one day, and that's really exciting and makes me think a lot about how I curate my reading and how I choose which book to read next, and I feel like that could actually be a different video discussion entirely. And you can let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in hearing about. I could have easily just stuck all of Jane Austen on this list, but that's too much, so I just picked one. There was also a tiny part of me that wanted to include all of the Bronte works, or all of the Gaskell works I've read on this list, because they are definitely favorites of mine. But how do you compare different Bronte or Austen books to different contemporary books? I often think of the Bronte books as a whole and associate them together. Probably because I read them for the first time in a Bronte seminar in school, and that was probably the best class I've ever taken. And for better or worse, I associate the Bronte books together, even though I know that they are three separate authors and each of their works is distinct. Likewise, all of Austen's works and all of the Gaskell novels that I've read form their own identities in my mind. I ended up choosing the works of these authors that stood out for me. I've read Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights apart from the Bronte course, so I feel like I have more history with them and they have more depth for me at the moment than other Bronte works. Pride and Prejudice is the only Austen book that I've read more than once, I think. I love these authors, the Brontes, Austen, Gaskell, but I feel the need to restrain myself from adding them all to this list. It's very strange because while watching the other booktubers make this tag, there were plenty of people who were saying how obvious and easy it was which books should make this list for them. And I don't understand that. Are their perceptions of books not constantly changing? When they reread a book and love it again and find new perspectives and details within its pages, doesn't that change their perception of the book and perhaps add it to the list where it may not have been before? Part of my issue here is that I don't reread books very often because I'm personally overwhelmed by how many unread books exist that I have a desire to read eventually. So on my top 10 list, I actually only have 3 books that I've read more than once, and those would be Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, and Wuthering Heights, all of which I've read exactly 3 times each. And I'm thinking about all the books I've reread in my entire life, and those are basically them, with the exception of picture books and select childhood favorites. If I reread books more often, would this list be easier to make? Maybe. There are a lot of books that I've read only once, but feel that I've had a very special connection with. There are quite a few of those on this list, and I feel that maybe I need to reread them in order to ascertain that my initial impressions were correct, and that they truly do have meaning and enjoyment and comfort for me at every stage in my life. I just can't shake this feeling that if I reread certain books, they'd be on this list. I'd like to reread Villette for Victorian October this year. It could easily make this list after that. And my bookshelves are just full of unread books that are other people's favorites or that I've read and think so fondly of that I wanted to own a copy of my own. If I read or reread those, would they make the list? I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm not sure what my list and my ranking really demonstrates, besides a snapshot in time. And I'm not quite sure what I think the overall statistics for Booktube will demonstrate either. Will they be indicative of what's currently popular in literature, or skewed by the ages and tastes of the Booktube population? Regardless, this project has obviously given me a lot to think about. So if you've made it to the end of my rambly discussion, congratulations, and I'd love to know, would it be easy for you to make a list like this, and why? Are you a big rereader of your favorite books, and do you think that's also part of what cements them as your favorites? Do you think our perceptions of books are constantly changing? What makes your favorite books your favorites? I'd also love to know any of the answers to these questions, or just anything you'd like to share related to this topic or anything I said in this video. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you in another video soon. Bye!